Okay, are we ready for a contest? Let's have a contest. And for contests, what I'll be doing is reading the name, the title of the speech, and name. And when I do that, I want to hear the biggest, the loudest applause you can give, because these are three brave people speaking today. Okay, here we go. Speaker number one, Todd Czaplewski. Luck, fate, or higher power? Luck, fate, or higher power, Mr. Todd Czaplewski!
Dear Todd, I hope this year has been good to you. I hope that you and your loved ones are enjoying good health. I hope you're seeing the fruits of your efforts and the realization of your dreams. I am, thanks to you and Steve. I offer you my humblest thanks and profound gratitude for if that were enough. God bless you and keep you and yours in every moment. Sincerely, Ed Bertrand. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, welcome guests. It has been 9 years since that day, but I can still remember the details in vivid clarity. My boss, Steve, and I, we were just about to leave a sales call out in the middle of nowhere. And I was about to make a right out of the parking lot, which would lead us on a dirt road back to town, when my boss said, Todd, why don't you make a left? Of course, Steve, being an avid fisherman, he'd heard that the Arizona Canal was off to the west, and I thought, Steve, it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I still have work to do, but you are my boss. So we headed off into more desolate farmland. And then he turned to a fishing story. He started to tell me about this type of fishing that the ancients used to do. It was called noodling. Believe it or not, the ancients used to find a canal bank. They'd stick their arm in, waiting for a big catfish or carp to grab their arm, and then they'd pull the thing out by their bare hand. I thought it was a fish story, but believe it or not, there's parts of the United States that they still practice this. So we stopped at a few potential fishing holes, and as we're riding parallel with the canal, which was about as wide as a 2-lane street, we saw a guy off in the water. And Steve said, hey look, there's a guy that's noodling. And I thought to myself, the oddity struck me immediately. That guy's not noodling, and as we got closer, nobody noodles in a canal. As we got closer, came upon a scene that I'll never forget, and the details play in slow motion in my mind. We saw the guy and we said, that guy is not noodling, he's drowning. As I pulled the vehicle up, I jumped from the driver's side and I started running down toward the canal. I could see the canal bank, I could see the spillway, I could see the frothing, turbulent water. I could also see the drowning man. His face was that of sheer terror, total exhaustion. Skin purplish in color. Maybe it was from the lack of oxygen or from the cold. As I got down to the canal bank and I looked back up toward my boss, he was feverishly dialing 911. But there was no landmarks around from which to describe our location. There was no time. I kept my eye on the man. I was looking at my boss. He ran to the back of the car. He started looking for something. Obviously, I thought he was going to try to throw something to the guy. And then he started running down the canal bank. I said, Steve, where are you going? Well, what he was looking for was some type of barbed wire or something he could throw the guy. And this guy was caught in a terrible situation. He was being driven underneath the water by the spillway, held underneath for 10 or 15 seconds. And as he was popped up downstream, he was rushed back up and the cycle was repeated. I knew that day that a strong swimmer would have difficulty outswimming the current, much less somebody trying to save somebody else's life. I was thinking very clearly, and as I knelt down on the canal bank, watching, I thought, I cannot believe I'm going to have to watch this guy die. And he was driven down again. When he popped up downstream, I had a moment of clarity. I thought, sure, he couldn't outswim the current, but maybe, just maybe, he could kind of swim parallel with it, toward me, toward the corner, and before he was driven underneath water, if I was to lie down, take off my belt, and get a little extra distance, maybe I could save him. I began to summon him, to encourage him, to have the energy to save his own life. I said, come on, come on, you can do it. And as I lie there on the ground, I flicked out my belt to him, and he missed. He was driven down again, and I never thought I would see him come up alive. Just then my boss starts running down the canal bank, and I said, no, Steve, stop! It's not gonna work. And that seemed to break him out of the hypnotized state that he was in, that he could have jumped in and saved this guy. We would have had 2 drownings that day. When the guy popped up downstream, his head was still above water. I was so relieved. The relief only lasted a second as he was driven back toward me again, and he was swimming. I was saying, come on, you can do it, you can do it. And I lie there again, and I flicked out my belt. And as fast as that looks, it looked in slow motion that day. And I watched as his hand grabbed around my belt. I pulled him to the side, and it was amazing how easy it was to pull him in when I was anchored on land. That current had seemed so strong. Up to that point, I could not believe how big that guy was. He didn't at the time, I never noticed it, but maybe it wasn't that he was so big. Maybe it was that the fact that he was so waterlogged, so tired, so weak. To pull him out of the water, Steve and I both hoisted him up. It was like a whale. We pulled him on the side, and he said, thank you, Jesus. Thank you. I was dead. I was dead. And he passed out. It was 20 minutes before we could revive him, really, and start to hear the story of how he'd fallen in upstream while he was fishing and made his way down to this spillway. I occasionally receive letters like the one I read earlier from Ed Bertrand. They always thank me in one way or another, but he's not the only one that's thankful for that day. I often think how, in life, we don't always have the opportunity to overcome a big challenge, and how we were able to do that together that day. And maybe it's not saving somebody's life, but maybe there's a little challenge that you could overcome each day, and there's a missed opportunity to be great. Whatever the reason, be it luck, fate, higher power, the odds of us being there at that moment, that day, were so small, it was immeasurable. But whatever the reason we were there that day, I'm just thankful that I was there to help. Mr. Toastmaster.